Hello and welcome to the Passion Show. My name is Phil, and joining me as always is my co-host Kyle.
Hello.
And this week we have a very special guest, Naomi.
Hello.
So in today's episode, we're talking about songwriting. So Naomi, you study songwriting there?
Yes, I do. I go to BIM Manchester, stands for the British Institute of Modern Music. And yeah, I do songwriting. I'm in my second year. So yeah, that's been going quite well.
Oh, nice.
When did you first sort of get into songwriting? Is it like, did it start with listening to music and then developing your own music, or how did it sort of develop for you?
So, I'd say I've always loved listening to music.
Mhm.
So my favourite band, very corny, when I was 13 years old, was the Jonas Brothers.
Very nice. Making a comeback, as I hear.
Yes, I was very excited, very excited. So yeah, it's actually been 10 years since I saw them. But anyway, so I'd say my sort of love for music sort of came out when I was about 13 years old. I picked up a guitar for the first time when I was about 12, 13, 14, got guitar lessons. At school, we didn't really have much in the way of provisions for music. So, the fact that I didn't start until I was 14 sort of meant that it was around sort of GCSE times, and it was sort of my studies were always going to come first over sort of music, which is sort of this on the side thing.
So it was it was kind of difficult to sort of find avenues to enjoy music and like enjoy songwriting and creating music at that point.
Yeah, I'd say it sort of took a back seat for a few years actually, and then I sort of went through sixth form, and then I actually went to uni initially in Brighton. I joined the music society there, and I just decided that I would rather sort of do music than what I was doing then. I was doing biological sciences.
Oh, what?
Really,
I knew it
really
was going to be
hated it.
something like science. I knew
Yeah.
it was going to be something like that.
So yeah, it was sort of then that I decided actually if I was going to do something, I might as well enjoy doing it. So that's when I decided to pursue music sort of full time as a career, I guess. Yeah.
That's really interesting because, like you said about studying biology, why did you want to do that first, and what points did you change your mind?
I reckon it was because I'd sort of always been good at it at school. I went to sort of science college, so they always pushed sort of the traditional subjects as opposed to the arts. So I always sort of envisioned myself doing something scientific. As things happened, didn't turn out that way, and yeah, I think I'm in a better position for it really.
So songwriting, what does it entail? What's the process like?
So I'd say everyone's process is really different. I'd say, obviously, with the process of songwriting, you start off with, well, one of 3 points that I've sort of found, either with a rhythm or, a melody or sort of like a sound. So I'd say like a timbre, which is, I guess you can play like a C chord on a guitar, on a piano, on a violin, and it will always sound sort of different. So I'm sort of like really interested in the sort of sounds. I will start off with typically one of those three and sort of try and build a track around one of those sort of core elements. Yeah.
Okay. Do you write lyrics as well, or is it just musical at the moment?
Yeah, I write all my own lyrics.
Yeah.
Sort of lyrical content personally that I like talking about are sort of stories or concepts as opposed to sort of personal experience. I don't know whether that's sort of just my own preference, but I feel like a lot of songwriters, in the past and contemporary songwriters write from a position of, personal experience, which there is nothing wrong with, but I personally find my own life quite boring, so I'd rather talk about someone else's. Or
I love a good song with a
Yeah.
story,
Yeah.
from a banger, aren't they? So,
Yeah.
what artists sort of inspire you, like, that you listen to?
So I'm a massive Radiohead fan, as you can probably tell. I'm wearing a t-shirt with Tom York on it.
Yeah.
And I really, really just enjoy listening to, the soundscapes on some of the albums that Radiohead, Tom York done. Lyrically, I think the last thing that I probably pay attention to is actually the lyrics, because I'm always listening to whatever sounds are in the background.
Wow,
And like
that's really interesting
Yeah.
because when I listen to a song, because I'm like really uninformed on music, like I couldn't even tell you my favorite genre. Like I know that a little, but like that I just perceive it as music. But like because I study media, I consume like films differently. So like it's really interesting here you talk about like how you have a different perspective on it because you know how it's constructed.
Kind of know where you're coming from as well, because like I play guitar myself, and I wanted to play bass before I played guitar. So in songs, I'd always listen for the bass in like songs that I like, and I'd try and like figure them out, and I still do it now. Like I'll listen to the just the bass in a song, and I'll try and like tune out everything
Wow.
else.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a skill in itself to be able to listen to a song and not just hear it as the entire song, but to hear its constituent parts. And as someone who is also a sort of a producer, I self-produce a lot. It's really important that you can hear the elements in music, so you can attempt to recreate it in your own, or just to know like what pieces of kit may have been involved at a production level. Obviously it'll be different for everyone has their different things that they pay attention to when listening to something, and I think that's just the subjective nature of the listening experience. Everyone will always find something different.
Wow, that's really true.
You just audibly heard Kyle's head get pumped off.
In terms of songs, like individual songs, the presented to you is like, oh, Ariana Grande's next track, but it's a collaborative project. Like it's a bunch of composers, and I never really think of it that way, but it is.
Yeah. I think obviously everyone's process varies widely.
Yeah.
A lot of people, have a bunch of collaborators on a track. Others, are sort of very much, I'm the producer, I'm the writer, I do like, everything. There's different sort of types of producers. So you've got like sort of the collaborator who works with the people. You've got I think it's called the jack of all trades, who writes, performs, plays everything.
Like Ed Sheeran.
Or like Mark Ronson. Yeah, he's a really good sort of example of a collaborator or a jack of all trades, because he will quite often direct the project or the song that he's working. He'll probably have written out all the parts, and
It's like he lends his writing to other artists, doesn't he?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
he's
yeah.
still the creative input.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
he just gets people in to sing for
Yeah,
him, so
yeah.
essentially, doesn't he?
Yeah, and there's not a lot of artists or producers like that, I've found. So yeah, I think for better or for worse, whether you personally are a fan of the collaborative aspect of music writing, it's sort of a really important bedrock of creativity, because someone else can come in and say, oh, I really like this, which is, something that you've written that maybe you aren't particularly a fan of, or they can say, oh, I like this, but you could do this better. It's a hard thing to do, first and foremost, because it is your own, it's your baby, you don't want to sort of expose yourself to criticism, because sometimes it hurts, but at the same time you've got to be open to it so that you can
Take
improve.
it on board and
Yeah,
improve. Yeah.
yeah.
We kind of talked about something similar in Zach's episode about screenwriting, where you need to be able, and the filmmaking one actually, where you need to be able to you need to be able to take criticism and stuff like that. And I think we also mentioned in that screenwriting one about the creative process. Like, do you find it easy to write songs, or do you ever just come across times where you've just like got a complete writer's block?
So it's funny you should mention this. So I literally just submitted my research methods last night, and it, like, the whole premise of the project was sort of ways of overcoming creator's block, or writer's block rather, and it is all about just sort of like adopting strategies of just coming up with something, whether the inspiration is there or not, because music is so sort of multifaceted. You've got the music and then you've got the lyrics. You have so many different starting points for the creative process that in actual fact, yeah, you're sort of spoilt for choice. You could start with lyrics, you could start with melody, you could start with top line, you could start with, the rhythms, and it is just about changing your process and sort of not getting too comfortable. I find that there's nothing that stifles creativity more than when you're sort of too comfortable, and it shows in what you write as well, because, if, like, personally, I found that when I was writing with guitar, predominantly, I found it difficult because I was limited by my skill level. But whereas now I've sort of got into the songwriter-producer sort of realm, I find it a lot easier to write something, because, you can start off with a brand new project, nothing on it, and do something, and then, you can come back to it in, like, a month or 2 months or 3 months time, and then you can work on it again and say, oh yeah, like, I like this about it, and then you can start to change and sort of like build on something, and that can be quite a fruitful experience to do.
I found that really interesting, where you said about there being different aspects to a song that you can start with. So if someone was like getting into songwriting like fresh and they're really like stuck at something, would you recommend just looking at the different like parts of a song you can start with.
Yeah, I reckon
going from there. Yeah,
the best sort of way to learn to songwrite is just by listening to your favourite artists and seeing what they do, because I'm sure there's like loads of literature that exists on how to write a song.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of songs that don't conform to that. And I think that some of the best songs just actively do things wrong that, you know,
to try and subvert.
Yeah. I reckon sort of like, you know, someone like Kanye, who's absolutely mental and like, but he's just also just such a intuitive songwriter when you're not listening to his lyrics.
Like a revolutionist.
Yeah, but as in, you know, I'd say take Yeezus, that album is just so full of just things that production wise, you know, are just not I guess it uses, you know, sort of the sounds at the beginning, that first song On Site, and it's just sort of, you know, really loud noises which are clipping for anyone who does recording is when the level is too loud, so you've got like the waveform is
have
clipped
that
at the
podcast.
top. Yeah. So like anyone who's involved in recording knows that that's not an effect that you want, but Kanye has done it to such a way that it's sort of just another texture in the music, and it's just like who'd have thought to sort of do that.
It's a horrible noise, like in when you don't want it.
When you don't want it, but then it's I guess that's what music is. Music is the sound, and it's just, you know, the way in which you use it is entirely up to you, and it can, you know, a noise which is just absolutely something that you don't want, even just like, you know, white noise or like vinyl pops,
like scratching,
that's something that's, you know, it's just an artifact from analog technology, and you couldn't really get rid of it, so you put up with it. But nowadays it's something that's desirable on a track, and it's just like people are adding you know, vinyl noise to digitally recorded mixes, and it's just like it's madness, but you know, it works for the aesthetic.
From the way you talk about it, it sounds like creativity in music is a real driving point for you. Like, do you try and implement creative techniques into your work?
Yeah. So I guess, so one of my other favourite artists is Everything, who it's sort of amazing that I've not mentioned them up to this point because they are one of my favourite bands of all time. So a lot of the lead singer's creative processes, well, as early on in his songwriting career, were just trying to be as weird as possible. Like, for anyone who isn't familiar with Everything, go and listen to them because they're great. The lead singer, his singing style is quite high, and like it's, I guess, in the vein of sort of Tom York or Matt Bellamy from Muse, and he like almost like sort of sing raps, and it's all very strange and interesting. But then like I think in later in sort of their discography, that's sort of a lot tamer, because I guess when you're starting out as a musician, you want to try and stand out. So how do you do that? You do that by making your compositions sound as interesting and different as possible. And on one hand, it's a really good way to try and do something that's never been done before. On the other hand, it's like you've got to realise that actually some of the best songs are doing the same thing as a lot of the other songs.
Yeah. There's a fine line between like creativity and then going too far, isn't there? And you can play it safe, like a lot of what like the charts does and stuff like that. But I think to be really influential and to drive music forward, you need to be like more creative, don't you? It's interesting that like it's a focus point of your work. Yeah.
I'd say, you know, even in the chart, the most successful people are often doing something that hasn't been done before.
Yeah, that's very true.
And, you know, everyone sort of jumps onto the bandwagon because of how successful it's become, and then it becomes a thing of, oh, it's really mainstream now.
Yeah, or it's taken something.
No one wants to touch it.
Yeah. Or it's taken something mainstream and sort of twisting it a bit. Like, mentioned Ed Sheeran before, and like just because he plays an acoustic guitar and raps a bit, it's a bit different, isn't it? Because he's some weird ginger guy. And then Post Malone comes about.
It's good that you brought up Ed Sheeran, because he's sort of a really good example of a songwriter who just loves what he does, and he just works at it, you know, every single day. You know, sleeping on a couch for God knows how many years, you know, didn't have a home because he was just, you know, doing the thing that he loves, and he's just turned it into like a massive business. You know, how many songs has he written that he's given to other people? It's because you know, so much of his process is informed by you know, popular music. He's he's a pop artist, and sometimes it's used as a sort of, you know, derogatory term because pop is just like this sort of dirty word. But actually, pop, what does pop mean? You know, it's popular. It's just what people are listening to a lot of.
The Beatles were pop.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think people obviously want to make the distinction between sort of old school pop music and sort of the new breed that is popping up now. And you know what, like, I think nostalgia is good and bad. I think it's good to see how things were back in the day, but then it's always about, you know, making do with what you had. So, you know, a lot of artists were just, you know, writing using the tools that they had to hand, and that, you know, yielded a certain sound for them, and then people will go and try and copy what they did, bearing in mind that we actually have access to a lot of different tools now. So yeah, I'd say that the creative process is also informed by just what you have to make music with.
Yeah, at your disposal.
So to sort of round things out, I just want to ask, what's sort of next for you? Where do you want songwriting to take you? Do you want to just like become an artist, or do you want to write for other people? Like, where would you like it to go?
I would say that I'm sort of working on my own songs for my own sort of project at the moment, and I've taken sort of my time about it because I guess for a long time I had an idea of the songs I wanted to write in mind. Anyone who knows what Everything or Radiohead sound like, you know, some of it is sort of very guitar-based drums, but then a lot of it is very sort of synth. Some of it is sort of synthesized sounds, samples, very sort of electronic, yeah. And when I didn't have access to those tools, it was very difficult for me to then want to write, because I was writing music that I necessarily wasn't into anymore, or you know, my style changes. As you know, happens when you grow up, you start broadening your listening tastes, and the sort of the type of music that I wanted to make I didn't have the tools for. So I've spent the past sort of 3 years at uni accumulating, you know, everything I need. That's the thing about wanting to be an electronic artist. It can be very expensive. It can be very cheap as well, but that's what I mean by sort of making do with the tools that you have. So that's what I did for a really long time, but slowly, as I've sort of invested in pieces of equipment, I've sort of felt a lot more satisfied with the things that I was writing, and I reckon that I'm in a really good point in my songwriting career because I actually have the tools that I need to be able to write. I have the songwriting vocabulary to be able to express it. Yeah, so that's
really nice.
I find it's really nice how it seems like you're just doing it for you, for your own projects and your own benefit. It's not like you're just chasing fame or anything like that, you know, being an artist. It's really like inspiring and cool.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's really respectable.
Yeah, I think how many years have gone through BIMS, you know, up and down the country, also just, you know, performing arts colleges, and you want to think about, you know, how many people have passed through those doors, graduated, and actually, you know, how many of those people have gone on to be successful. You know, it's very applicable to anything creative, that, you know, how many people go through the doors of prestigious institutions doing anything artistic, and how many people are sort of like still doing it now. I think you've got to have a lot of perseverance
and commitment.
Commitment,
love.
Like honestly, and love. Because I'm not sure if you're aware now, but sort of the music industry, for lack of a better word, there's not a lot of money in it anymore. The days of sort of artists making millions and millions and millions off the back of an album are sort of no more, for better or for worse. And
is that because of like Spotify and YouTube?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's a whole other sort of conversation for another day. Essentially,
you could argue as well though that because there's less money in it, the people that are staying are more committed, aren't they? And the people,
100%.
The people who do persevere sort of are really like passionate about it and into it.
Yeah. I think, like I said, with anything, it requires a level of perseverance and
definitely
skill, wanting to just do it despite the people who are, you know, dropping away left, right and centre, because for them it's just not sustainable to be constantly poor and constantly, you know, living on the breadline. And it's a hard thing, and it's a scary thing actually as an aspiring artist to observe, because whether someone likes what you do is shouldn't be at the forefront of what you do, because you should be doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you want to keep doing it, then enough people have to like what you do. And yeah, it's very sort of hit and miss in that respect. But you've just got to hope, and you've got to have a little bit of blind hope that
just believe in yourself. Yeah.
Well, I think on that hopeful note, we'll sort of wrap it up there. So thanks to Kyle, as always, for being my co-host.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks to Naomi for coming on and talking to us about songwriting.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, if you have any passions yourself that you want us to talk about, feel free to leave them in the comments below, because we'd love to talk about them.
Or hit us up in the DMs if you want to come on the show yourself.
Yeah, if you want to come on the podcast, feel free to send us a message, because we're always looking for new guests for the show. But other than that, we'll see you next time.
Have a good day.
Bye.